don't know what this thing is, it's called a cushaw. It is a member of the squash family, and you can cook with it like you can a pumpkin. I usually make cushaw pies with it, and that's what we're going to make with this. Alright, let's get this thing cut in half. This was grown in my neighbor's garden last year. Last year. And it's still good. He had more than he can handle, so he shared with me, which is awesome. So, cut off the stem. That'll go for the piggies. Alright, let's see. I'm trying to figure out the best way to do this. Alright, let's see if this will be a good way. I'm always trying to find easier ways of doing things. So we'll see if this makes it easier. Surprisingly, yes, that was easier. Okay, now we're going to cut this up in chunks, kind of like you would potatoes when you want to cook them to mash them. As you can see, it looks just like a pumpkin inside. And if you're anything like me, I'm a avid seed saver, so and this is a quick way of getting it out. Alright, once you get your cushaw cut up into chunks like that, you put them in your crock pot and turn it on low. Let them do that for about 12 to 24 hours. Check them regularly, make sure they're all cooking pretty evenly. This is just one way you can do this. This is more of a it cooks on its own and you don't really have to worry about it type of way to do it. But if you've got the time and you want to do it this way, you could actually cut the cushaw in half, scoop the seeds out, lay it on a baking sheet with the inside pointing up, and put it in the oven for about, let's see, probably somewhere between 375 to 400 degrees for about an hour. And it will loosen up all the insides, and you can actually skip the insides out of the shell. But I prefer to do it this way because I've got so much on my plate. It's just easier to let it cook without having to watch it so much. So, all right, we'll let this do its thing and continue when it's finished.
The next day.
All right, today is the day. We are making the cushaw pie filling. And the recipe that I'm using is from Spruce Eats. I will link the link in my description box. So this recipe calls for 2.5 cups of the cooked squash, or the cushaw. And because cushaw has such a high water content, you're going to want to run it through a strainer as you're measuring it out to make sure you're getting more of the meat of the squash and not so much water. Make sure it's mashed real good. You can also puree this if you want it to have a smoother texture. I think this is pretty good. Alright. We're going to add, let's see, 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. 1/4 teaspoon of allspice. We're going to add 2 cups of sugar. I'm using the 1/2 cup measuring cup. Decided to do it 2 times. We're going to go ahead and mix this in. Now we're going to add 1/4 teaspoon of salt and a tablespoon of flour. Mix that in. It's best to do this if the cushaw is still kind of warm from the cooking. That way everything gets melted together pretty evenly and easily. Now we're going to add in 2 large beaten eggs. Two tablespoons melted butter. I don't have a microwave, so I have to melt mine on the stove. And it calls for 1/4 cup of heavy cream, but I don't have any, so I'm going to substitute with evaporated milk. Pour just a little bit more for good measure. I'm not much into measuring anyway. I like to eyeball things. This isn't the recipe I usually use. I couldn't find my original recipe, the one that I used a couple of years ago for this, but this actually seemed pretty close to the one I was using, and it actually looks close to how it was supposed to look. So I think this will be good. May even be better than my original one. Okay, if I had a pie shell, I would just be putting it in the pie shell, wrap it up like that, and put it in the freezer. But since I don't, I'm going to be doing it this way. So what I've done is I'm taking a stock pot, got a Ziploc bag, this is a gallon size. I've got it in here just to kind of help hold it up. Open it up all the way. You can also put it in a freezer safe jar, but I prefer to use these. Whoop. In theory, that's not supposed to happen. Alright, I've made a bit of a mess, but I've always heard if it ain't messy, then it ain't good, so this ought to be delicious. Get a paper towel. Just want to make sure it's off the teeth of the bag here so it'll close good. Okay. Now, I don't know if you've seen the straw trick or not, but I've done it for years and it tends to work. You mash the bag together, all except for a small opening right here. Stick a straw, don't stick it all the way in the goop or you will get a mouthful, and that's never fun. Close the bag up around the straw and suck the air out. Now I'm going to turn it over on its side, mash it flat so there'll be room in the freezer. And if I was smart, I would have written on the bag before I did this, but no one ever accused me of being smart, so. I'm going to attempt to do it now. I can't believe that worked actually. But there you go. You put it in the freezer like that, let it freeze. It'll be like a little brick. And then what I like to do is once it's frozen and in a hardened state, I'll wrap it in aluminum foil. And that way it'll keep out freezer burn a little better. But that is cushaw pie filling, and it tastes just like a pumpkin pie. It's great for Thanksgiving, Christmas, anytime during the fall and winter months. It's great anytime really, but that's my preferred time of the year to eat it. As a side note, I went ahead and made the rest of that cushaw into pie filling, and it made enough for, I think it's going to be enough for 6 individual pies from that one cushaw. And I'm trying a different method here. Maybe it won't be so nasty. What I did is I doubled the recipe, so that's why there's a whole lot more of it this time than there was in the first video. If you're making more, you can actually double the recipe like that. I think this is going to work actually. Looks about right. There we go. Less mess.